real quick, if you haven't heard about the FX Summit 2023 conference in Miami, make sure you guys grab your tickets, fxsummit2023.com. We'll make sure to see you there, June 9th to the 11th. Come learn from some of the best traders, investors, and crypto enthusiasts. We'll see you guys there. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another incredible episode of the Expert Trader podcast series. We have a good friend of mine on the show today, Mr. Dimitri Wallace, aka Goldfather, aka founder of Gold Mines. Dimitri, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
But appreciate you getting on.
Of course, always. Definitely glad to be here with the economics king and also my ASAP Rocky side partner lookalike, Preston.
Welcome, Preston. We got the Gold Mines team in the house.
Definitely.
Let's go.
Dimitri, we've been seeing each other a lot. We were on a boat. There was a conference. There was a freestyle. It's all a blur, but there was a freestyle. I'm pretty sure there was a New York event. So we've been seeing each other around. But can you catch folks up on what you've been up to? And actually, let's start back from the beginning. If you can give an introduction on yourself to some folks who might not know who you are.
Hey, so my name is Dimitri, aka the Goldfather. I've been trading for God. I'm getting old. I just turned 30 last year. Just turned 30 January, and I've been trading since I was 20. Got into the space, like more of the niche around like 2014, 15, took off at 2016, started running a group from 2016 all the way till now, called Gold Mines. We gave out free signals, changed a lot of lives, impacted a lot of people, added a lot of value to the space. And that's how I kind of just blew up, just started calling signals on Snapchat and Telegram. And then it just grew to this giant community. So that's where we're at now.
Amazing.
And yeah.
My bad. But just I kind of want to go step by step here, just so folks kind of have an accurate background before we get started. But you're like a very fascinating person to me. You have a ton of diverse skill sets. You speak multiple languages, Chinese, everything in between. And so I think that like there's a lot that we can dig in here about mindset, about your experience. But I want to talk to folks about trading real quick. It's a trading podcast. So how would you describe yourself as a trader?
Word. Yeah, I would describe myself as a swing trader. And the reason why I like to be a swing trader is I look at it as like being a fortune teller. I'm like, would I rather know what's going to happen in the next 5 minutes or 15 minutes or know what's going to happen in the next 6 months to a year? That just seems like a cooler superpower to know. And so that's why I really admire swing trading in general. So, yeah.
Have you always been a swing trader, or is that something you had to develop?
Something I definitely had to develop. I was scalping my way through life, just realizing, damn, this isn't for me. Like just blowing account after account. And I'm just like, man, like scalping just gives me so much anxiety. Like, I'm like, do I close out now? Do I hold on? I'm just kind of by nature now, a swing trader. It's just all I do. And I find it a lot more easy for me. I find that I'm a lot more patient. I'm a lot more calm. I'm less attached to the chart. And for me, it's like, it's less risk, right? Because I'm not like in and out of a trade every second. You know what I mean? It controls a lot of my impulsivity and it helps me become better at patience.
So I'm not sure if you can talk about this because I'm sure that there's some stipulations, but you do trade some large capital and we're just going to leave it at that. And so we want to talk about some of those pressures of trading the large capital and maybe how you've changed your strategy since taking on that bigger responsibility. But how have you seen your strategy change over the years? Like, were you always a swing trader or did you kind of go, okay, I had my scalping days, I had my swinging phase, and then this is where I'm at now?
I think I've been able to kind of like do both. So there's been like some sort of equilibrium now. Like, okay, you know what? I know myself enough. I think trading like with character development is very important, knowing yourself before you know the charts. And so I think like, okay, you know what? This is my level of scalping that I'm comfortable and that I'm good at. And then this is my level of swinging that I can just kind of maximize on. So with the capital that I'm trading now, I'm able to go in between those two modes. I'm able to identify a setup and say, you know what? I can stay in this for a duration of time of maybe 10 to 15 minutes. And then I could stay in this trade for maybe a day to 2 days. So it really just comes with identifying, high probability setups and, just a comfort level.
So that level of discretion, which is like using your opinion in that moment to make a decision, that's something that I feel like only really experienced traders are able to master. Do you feel like it's something that your experience has been able to help you develop, or is that something that you could potentially teach to someone?
I think teaching it may be hard, right? Because there's some things that you really can't teach. Thing to teach is probably emotional control, right? Because everyone is dealing with emotions differently. Maybe how they deal with anxiety is different than I deal with it. Maybe, some people need to squeeze a stress ball. Other people need to take a cigarette break or whatever it may be. So I feel like teaching that is very hard, but being that is something that could be a little bit more easier because every person is unique and special in their own way, right? So every situation is unique, how someone would approach a chart or how someone would emotionally deal with the chart. So I think that with time and experience, you know, you can become that trader that you want to be.
Just on that note, how do you see emotions in trading?
I want to say I don't. I want to say something profound. I see it as almost like it's like the angel and devil on my shoulder, right? And I feel like emotions, you're going to have emotions in trading. So what I personally like to do is I like to diversify my accounts. So I have one account for high risk, one account for low risk, one account for news, one account for trial and error, and then one account for buying and selling. And this not only gives you, you know, more room for error, but it allows you to kind of control your emotions, put your emotions into different categories. And I got the strategy from an ex-girlfriend, right? She was just like, always like, she'd have her capital and you know, one big account. And then she'd be like, well, you know, maybe I'm just going to add a little bit big of her lot size. And she would do it on an account that she's been practicing risk management on, where I'm like, why don't you just kind of have a high risk capital account? Or you can exercise that. Maybe you're not getting rid of the emotion, but you're suppressing it in a certain degree to where you know, okay, well, you know what? This is my high risk account. So I could take high risk trades on here. And this is the capital that I can afford to lose versus having all that capital in one account and just throwing all your emotions in there. So that's kind of like what works for me in the beginning.
I think that's amazing. It's counterintuitive, but I think that that's super helpful stuff because most people think they have to fight their emotions. What you're talking about is like, look, they're there. So just learn to build guardrails around your emotions and your personality so you can protect yourself. I think that's very helpful, and that's kind of in line with what I believe too. On the topic of the multiple accounts, that's something that I've tried before, and I realized that on top of the emotional stress of being in the trades, now there's this like mental component of like keeping track of all the accounts and sort of keeping them all those tabs open. How did you manage that, and how do you manage that emotionally?
I feel like for me, it's just kind of something that I ended up developing over time. Like it's something I just kind of got used to, you know, some things like they started to feel uncomfortable at first. I'm like, oh my God, I'm looking at this account, then that account. But I think as I started to like go through emotion by emotion. So let's say I was just in a high risk mood. I just had a high risk attitude for, you know, that entire week. I'd be focusing on my high risk account. Then let's say, you know, I was in like a low risk kind of vibe. I'd be focusing on my low risk account. And then let's say I was like, okay, you know what? There's news. I'm going to go ahead and take, you know, this trade on news. And I would do that in my news account. So I think I was able to just like, as time went by, I just kind of gradually just was able to just do it easily. You know what I mean? I don't think it was anything special or magnificent that happened. It was just with trial and error and time. So
I think what I'm starting to realize
everybody manages things differently, you know?
For sure. Yeah. But I think it's all about the experience because you've had all of this experience and you've just been able to do the trial and error. And I think that with even in the workshops, the biggest thing that I was getting is like the most important parts to trading, you actually can't teach. People have to go through those experiences. And I feel like the first time you tried to manage multiple accounts, it probably didn't feel that comfortable. And then eventually you just start to build yourself up, right? There we go. So talk to me about trading your own capital versus trading someone else's capital. Prop firms are big nowadays. Any psychological difference, any difference in strategy?
I think there definitely is a psychological difference at first, like when you start off. So for me, like trading my own capital left me at a sense of freedom, right? Because it's my money. No one's telling me what to do. No one's making rules. No one's behind me. No one's micromanaging me. It's just me and the charts. So I think trading my own capital at first allowed me to become a way better trader rather than trading for someone else at first, right? Because I got to find out about myself more. And I think the problem is with people is they want to go find out about the market more than they want to find out about themselves. It's like how could you understand what's happening on the charts if you don't understand what's happening to you internally? And I think trading is something where you need a lot of character development, where you need to know yourself, know what pairs that you like to trade, know your style of trading, like, you know, know your emotions, your risk size, your tolerance. Like these are certain things that you need to know. So when I started trading personally for myself, that allowed me to like grow and become who I wanted to be, right? In order to do something, you have to be something. So I said, you know what? This is my style. This is what I like. This is what's comfortable with me. And then when I started trading others' capital, then that's when it got a little bit, at first it was hard. I'm not going to lie. It was really hard, really stressful because you are bought with the idea that you have to perform, right? It's like singing in the shower versus singing on stage in front of thousands of people. You're Whitney Houston in the shower. You're Frank Ocean in the shower. You get outside in front of all those people and your voice is crackling. You know, you're missing notes and stuff like that. And that's kind of how I felt at the time. I was just like, man, like I just got a lot of people watching me. It was a lot of pressure. But once I started to realize that the only difference is that it's someone else's capital versus mine, that my character is still the same, the strategy is still the same, it kind of alleviates a certain worry from you. And you realize it's really the same thing. So, yeah.
Wow. It all comes back full circle. So I guess a big piece that I got away from that is that putting that unexpected pressure on yourself is what causes a lot of the stress. Because like the first time that you're doing something like managing capital, the stress is allowing you to kind of get away from your strategy, get away from your roots. And now you're doing things that you wouldn't normally do. So do you feel like that's a problem for a lot of traders too? Is like just putting undue stress and expectations on themselves?
You know what it is? I think it's that. And I also think it's like what people see in the niche. They see somebody throwing 5 lots, 10 lots, 15 lots, you know, and they get this false sense of like, oh, I can do that too. And it's not that they can't. It's just that it's not your time to do that. You know what I'm saying? So a lot of times people will see other people doing things and have this unrealistic expectation. And I hate to use the word unrealistic, but it is. It's an unrealistic expectation that you're going to be that at that certain time. And, you know, like I said, trading is about who you are becoming, right? So everyone is becoming a certain part of themselves, developing a certain character within themselves at a certain time. And maybe that time is not yours. So I think that's what also hinders a lot of traders, is thinking that they're supposed to be at a place that they're actually not yet.
That's amazing. And what you said was really powerful. It says you're becoming something. Like the process of improvement is more important than like, you know, than having a certain thing. So when you're looking at, you know, who you want to become, like if it's not aiming to be like another trader, for example, are you aiming to be a better version of yourself? Or how do you set a goal so that you can become that goal, if that makes sense? I feel like it's only a question I can ask you.
Right. I look at it like, for example, you know, when we see actors, Batman, you know, Christian Bale, Tom Holland, Spider-Man, all these people, they're not really Spider-Man, they're not really Batman, but they play the role so well that when we look at Tom Holland, we think of Spider-Man. When we look at Christian Bale, we think of Batman, because they're able to play that character and be so immersed in that role that it almost becomes them, that the people identify them with that superhero. And so I think that in order to do something, you kind of have to be that character, right? And suddenly, like the ways that you talk, the ways that you act, the ways that you do certain things, they're going to become you. And I think that most people don't want to really go through that process, because we live in an age of instant gratification. I call it microwave success versus the preheated oven. You ever put a pizza in a microwave? Doesn't taste as good. Tastes like shit, right? You put it in a preheated oven, the crust is good, the cheese is good. And that's due to the time that it's in that oven, right? And I think that people don't want to go through the character development of time. So if they did, then you will become like the Christian Bales, the Spider-Mans. That's why people identify me as the Goldfather. My group is called Gold Mines, because it's the character development that I want to be, right? I want to be the gold guy. And so I'm learning, trying to learn everything I could about gold, how much it wicks, how much it moves on Mondays, Tuesdays, Wednesdays. All that stuff is about me becoming that person.
Incredible. That was really, really well said. So, okay, on the topic of gold and on the topic of you sort of building your identity around trading this pair, if I wanted to get into trading gold, what speech or what conversation would you have with me? If I was somebody listening to this and I want to get into trading gold, what would you tell me?
I would tell you personally, go on the chart, go on kitco.com, go on investing.com, learn everything that you can about that one single pair. Like become a master at that pair. The same way somebody would say, well, how do you think I'd become a blue belt in jiu-jitsu? Go to class every day, talk to as many instructors as you can, read as many books as you can. I think it's doing as much as you can in order to become that person that you want to be. So if that means that you have to spend London session, New York session, Asian session, looking over the market, do that. If that means that you have to be looking at daily news reports on gold, do that. Does that mean you have to be going on CME.com and looking at the open interest contracts? Do that. Like whatever it takes, you should do.
So to touch on that fundamentals subject and kind of like things for people to pay attention to if they want to trade a pair, what specifically do you look at for an instrument like gold or for a commodity like gold? Are there certain things that you've realized move markets more than others? Is there a certain correlation that you've seen? What have you found in your experience trading gold?
In my experience, well, I'm a price action trader. I'm not so much of a fundamental trader, but I know gold is definitely a fundamental based pair, right? It's always a hedge. And so I like to go on kitco.com, which is a really great site. I read different things about inflation, interest rates, CPI news reports that come out. Also oil, because oil is a black gold, as you know. I look for these little different things. And, I may not be the best fundamentals trader there is, I'm not as economically as smart as you are, but I'm able to find different little things like in those articles that I could read certain keywords and certain key things that they say and kind of add it to my price action analysis.
There we go. And I think it's really important to realize, because I don't trade the capital that you do. And so if folks are kind of like pressing themselves on not being as confident in their understanding of fundamentals, what could you tell them? And because, I'm assuming that you have you have your technical strategy, but I've also seen you use a few other indicators. If you can talk about that and how maybe you don't need that full fundamentals knowledge.
Right. So a lot of other things that I use, for example, I like to use, so there's a system that I use called Bookmap. Really great tool. Shout out to Bookmap. I didn't make it. It's a really great tool, and it shows you the contracts in the gold market, NAS 100 indices, Forex, whatever you want. I personally use it for gold, but it shows me all the contracts for hedgers, bettors, spreaders, institutions. You could see where all the contracts are, and you compare them diagonally. And it also shows a lot of liquidity zones from the past and the present, where if you look at footprint charts, they don't do that. If you look at other charts that have order flow in them, they really don't do that. So Bookmap is another great tool that I personally use that allows me to see, how heavy are these contracts that are coming in, as far as the big boys.
So how'd you get introduced to something like that? Is that something you came up on your own, or is that something you learned from someone who was maybe in an institution or kind of on that side?
So I started learning from a guy named Daryl Martin. Really great, really great futures trader. Before I was just like kind of straight price action trader. Then I got into more being like a time sequence trader, and then I got more into being like a volume trader. And Daryl is like a just straight volume trader. But I started to learn through him, and I kind of started to understand volume more. Like at first, he started me off with CME, which showed me the open interest in the contracts, like the open interest changes. He taught me the difference between open interest and volume. And then I kind of transitioned to footprint charts. And then from footprint charts, I learned that for a little bit. And footprint charts work great. They're awesome. I used them on NinjaTrader for quite a bit of a time. And then I ended up finding Bookmap. And then I ended up combining like what I already knew with that. Like, okay, well, how do I combine time sequence with identifying when is something going to happen versus where it's going to happen? So time sequence and volume really changed the course of my trading.
And I think that's like the fourth dimension of trading is you can get the price, you can get the entry, but the when, that's always the hardest one, right?
Yeah, the when.
Yeah, That's awesome.
Absolutely.
So how did you land on gold? Why not any other instrument? Why not the indices like everyone else?
This is funny. I used to trash talk gold a lot, honestly. Like people that traded gold, I was just like always just talking shit about them. But it was funny because back in the day, I was trading oil. People knew me as like the oil guy. I was really good at oil. And one of my friends named Carlin Poole, he was trading gold, and he was just absolutely murdering the market. And I'm not gonna lie, I felt some kind of way. I was like, damn, you're just kind of just killing this easily. You know what I'm saying? Like you're just killing this with ease. And so I was like, nah, gold is whack. Like nobody really wants to trade that, that old ass asset. And he was like, nah, man, like gold is just great. Like it has just this vibe to it. And so I was like, all right, let me give it a try. And I was so like, my ego was so big on like oil, because I was just like, that's what I'm known for. That's what I'm doing. I'm not going to look at any other asset. And I looked at gold, and I got obsessed. I'm not going to lie. I just started looking at it every single day. Started trading. At first, I started off with like a demo and started taking little trades on it. And I'm like, wow, this is great. It's not as volatile as oil. It has like this, like gold is interesting. Like, like people trade like NAS 100, US 30, oil. Like those are like super volatile pairs. But I feel like gold has this like, just this equilibrium. There's just kind of like smoothness to it. Like, yes, it's volatile, but it's, it's not some great bank out of it. So I started going over gold with Carlin and Daryl at the time, and I just ended up sticking.
I've never heard anybody describe gold as smooth. All right. But I think that, but honestly, I think it speaks to the level of experience, because what you're describing is the calm inside the storm. It's
Word.
everybody else is like when the market is wicking and everyone's sort of panicking in out of trades, they're over leveraged, so they're getting margin called, whatever it is. You're in that sort of like precision state where you can take advantage of that opportunity where it seems a lot smoother. I don't know, folks, everyone's like, oh, I'm going to go trade gold. Dimitri said it was easy.
Right. Don't listen to the part. I'm just talking
maybe,
from my own personal experience.
for sure. I mean, maybe listening to Dimitri might help you if you want to trade gold. But can you talk to me about some of the most memorable parts of your trading? So typically I want to ask a generic question, biggest wins, biggest losses, but I want to ask most memorable wins, most memorable losses.
My most memorable wins and memorable losses, man. Oh man, gold. It's crazy. It's like talking about like an ex-girlfriend that I went on a bunch of vacations with. Yeah, so I think one of my most memorable wins, honestly, and it probably wasn't like my biggest win to this date. It was I would consider it a small win in the grand scheme of things, but it was Brexit. Brexit was probably like the most phenomenal time that I just felt like amazing. I felt like, yeah, like this is it. Like I got this. And that's when, of course, I had gold mines at the time. We were just watching the news like a hawk, like to see which trades, what countries would vote exit. And when I started seeing, at first I was actually down. I was down about like $15,000 on gold. And I remember just like feeling so down. I'm like, damn, I really hope I don't like screw up this trade. And then once I started to see the votes start to come out, because I had bought, right? Mind you, I had bought. It was just on my own strategy. I had bought, and gold was just tanking. It tanked probably about like 100 pips. And then it just ended up turning around, just flew to the other side up 1,000 pips. Sometimes I go back to the chart and I even just look at the trade and I'm just like in awe. I'm like, wow, I can't believe I caught this trade. And I ended up making like $60,000, $70,000.
Sheesh.
And that setup. Yeah, during Brexit. And I was super excited. And also I called the trade out for gold mines. Everybody was like posting in the group. It was all blues. It was a really great time. It's probably my most memorable. Not my biggest trade to date, but my most memorable for sure. Because I think at that time I felt like it gave me a sense of confidence. It gave me a sense of reassurance. Like I know what I'm doing. Like I'm good.
Now, the thing about events like that, where the money comes in super quick, is it kind of sets an unrealistic expectation. And we sometimes start trying to chase that high. Have you felt like since that moment, have you ever been trying to chase that high?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. After that, definitely. It's like you're in a UFC fight, you beat the biggest dude up, you knock out Mike Tyson. Remember when Douglas Buster knocked out Mike Tyson? He probably felt like, oh, I'm the man. I just knocked out Mike Tyson. I can do this with anybody. And it's not a good mindset to have. Because then you start going into every news event thinking that you're the man, thinking that you could do that. And of course, you'll never be able to perform the way you are every time. So definitely I wouldn't suggest that, but it is definitely a good high that you get.
For sure. I've talked to the reason I mentioned that is I've talked to a few traders that Brexit was that big moment. It's like 5K weeks, 5K months. And then they were in a trade in Brexit. They came back. It was a GBP trade and they were up 45 grand or 50 grand. And that was the moment for them that really kind of shifted things. And with me personally, I've had a few of those moments, but all the times where I've put in all the analysis and all the work and everything, it hadn't been the biggest trade. But a random trade I took during one of these news events, it was another trade that ended up becoming a big banger. So how do you stop yourself from having that perspective and kind of bringing things back down to be like, this is not going to happen every time, even though the emotions can get the best of you?
Right. So after that had happened, I was still on a hot streak. And I think I don't remember the news event that it was, but I had ended up losing. I ended up losing really big on that event. And that kind of humbled me. So I think sometimes the same people that win those big events also need to lose. And that's sometimes, there's people that learn different ways. Some people learn where you can tell them something and say, hey, don't do this. And some people have to learn with their back against the wall. You know what I mean? For instance, like one of my friends, like his parents used to tell him like, yo, stay off motorcycles. And he just wouldn't listen until he finally lost his leg. And he's like, all right, I think I'm going to stay off motorcycles. You know what I'm saying? And so
I didn't mean to laugh, but it's like, you got to put your hand on the stove, and it speaks true to trading too. You'll tell somebody, be like, look, I've been through that door and I've burned my hand. Don't go in that door. And they're like, I got to do it for myself. You just got to throw your hands up at that point.
I was one of those people that needed to kind of just get humbled really quickly and learn that, okay, you know what? Stuff like this doesn't happen all the time.
You're in like a pretty, I want to say late stage, because you're still young. You're just getting started. You're trading this big money, but you've been in trading for about 7-8 years. But if someone's in that year 1, year 2, year 3, and they're starting to lose patience, they're starting to lose that sight of becoming a profitable trader, how were you able to keep yourself motivated through that period and to keep looking at the bigger picture to get to where you are today, where you're managing capital and people are trusting you because you've shown the consistency?
I'm sorry, can you say that last part? It kind of cut out of my end with the Wi-Fi.
Yeah, it's like, how did you keep yourself with that long-term vision of being a trader in those times where maybe trading wasn't going well for you? Because people are probably in year 1, year 2, year 3, and they're like, man, I'm already fed up with this. Right. And they're looking at you like, how can I, like, how you probably Dimitri had it all easy, but maybe there was times where you were losing. How did you keep yourself
absolutely
in that mindset?
Absolutely. There was one point actually, and this was early on in my career. I think it was one point where like, I think I made probably about like 10 bands, 15 bands, and I was so hyped. And I ended up quitting my job and was like, yo, like, I got this, like, I can do this. And then I ended up losing all that money and having to go right back. And at one point I felt in my life, like, I was like, yo, like, I just can't do this. You know what I'm saying? I think it took like 2.5 years for me to be like really, really good at what I was doing. And I always look at it as like, how I got this idea was like when I was looking outside and I was like, damn, look at all these buildings. Someone had to see these buildings be here before they actually were here, right? And all these buildings probably took time and energy and effort and like to make the pattern of it and the setting of it and the lobby and the lights. All this shit probably took so much time, but it's here. And so I kind of thought about that. And walking around New York City makes you think like of all the things that people could build, all the architecture, like, damn, probably took a lot of time. And so I kind of started to reflect that on in my trading. Like when I was at that certain point, you don't see things. You don't see the money coming into your account. You don't see the wins happening. You kind of feel like you're down. But I just knew if I kept doing this, if I just keep on doing this, it's going to work out. There's a really great video that I would love to recommend to everybody. It's called Accept It by Alan Watts. I don't know if they took it down on YouTube, but I used to watch this video every day. Was basically accepting that you'll never be good at it and you'll be good at it. Trying not to try. And in Dragon Ball Z, there was an episode of Vegeta where he was so gung-ho about beating Kakarot. He was like, I have to beat Kakarot. I have to become the best Saiyan. And when he put in that 9,000 hours of just training in the chamber and he stopped caring, he stopped deciding to be better than Kakarot, he stopped deciding to be this all high, mighty super god, that's when it happened for him. And I feel like that's when it happens for most people. It's not that when you give up, right? It's when you stop trying and having an attachment to something. And I feel like most people have this attachment to being like $1 million trader instead of just being a better trader, right? We all want the end result. We all want to become a millionaire, a billionaire off of trading. But it's like, if you focus on being a better trader, money is inevitable. If I focus on, it's like if I'm a black belt, if I want to be a black belt and my objective of fighting is just to go around beating people's ass, I'll never be a black belt. But if my objective is to practice my punches and my kicks and perfect those every single day, then naturally I'll be able to win. And so that's the way I like to.
This is so spot on. So spot on. It's it's the process focused versus the outcome focus.
Absolutely.
If you're too obsessed on the outcome and you're like, I want to be a millionaire. I want to be a millionaire versus like, what do millionaires do? Okay. Let me obsess every day about doing that. Millionaires don't, they connect with people. Millionaires, they find opportunity. Millionaires can find a way to protect their assets and stuff. And they learn about financial education. What if I just did that every single day? And especially in trading. And this is kind of like on that same topic, as I tell traders all the time, is if you're too focused on passing and having the prop firm, or you're too focused on making money or making a certain dollar amount, eventually that's going to be counterintuitive. Versus if you focus on, I need to focus on my risk management, taking only 2 trades and finding this strategy and pattern, obsessing over that, you're going to get the money.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I always try to tell people that, like, stop. If the end result is what you're after, you're going to get it regardless, right? Because you're actually after the end result. But during that end result, if you're never after the character development and becoming what you need to be in order to get the end result, then you'll never have it. You know what I mean? And so I think once people get past the idea of trying to be a millionaire or becoming a millionaire versus becoming a better trader, they won't even realize when they hit their million. Like it'll just be kind of like, wow, like I'm halfway there.
That's amazing. So what are the characteristics that make a profitable trader? Not just from your own perspective, because I'd love to hear, because you're a very unique person too, but just from like the traders that you've talked to over the many years, what are the similarities that you've seen between yourself and other successful traders?
I think that we kind of all have like different things that we would say would make us successful, but I think it all comes down to patience, frugality, and sacrifice. The patience to be able to be patient with yourself, patient with the setup, patient with the trade. The frugality to be able to manage the trade, right? Knowing how much risk you could put, right? So you don't blow your whole account. And the sacrifice to take buy and sell, right? I think those are the three quality traits that, you know, will make a good trader, and a trader that is sticking to their plan. I notice a lot of traders that I speak to, they don't really deviate from their plan. Like a lot of top traders, it's not like, oh, well, I have a new strategy today now, or I have a new strategy coming out next week, or check out my new Bollinger Bands. They've been using the same thing for the past 5-6 years and have just been consistent with it. And it reminds me of a quote that Bruce Lee said. He said, I'm not afraid of a man who's practiced 1,000 kicks, but I'm afraid of a man who's practiced one kick 1,000 times. And that's just so powerful. Very cliche, but also very powerful, that if you stick to your plan and you don't deviate from it and you consistently do it over and over again, I just don't see why you won't be successful. Of course, sometimes you may need to adapt to the market. The market is constantly adapting. You may need to find and change little things. But I've never seen somebody go to the gym every single day, work out, have the protein they're supposed to have, you know, work out twice a day and not get brolic. Like you just never see that, right?
And if they don't, it's because they're doing something in private that nobody knows about. It's
right.
Like you're working out every day and you're on a diet for 6 months and you haven't lost weight. It's like, bro, something's going on back there. But dude, I'm going to be honest, this has been one of my favorite conversations of the year so far. I think that the way that you're breaking these things down, I am fully supportive of almost everything that you've said during this entire podcast. And I really, really hope that folks are paying attention, because you're speaking from the perspective of someone who's been through so many years of experience. And I think that's something that you can't fake and you really can't find anywhere. You have to meet people that have been through the trenches. So I really appreciate the way you're breaking things down.
Definitely, man. I appreciate that. I'm glad to, it comes from the bars too. When I rap, I love to create analogies and comparisons and stuff like that. So I put it into conversation too, And
that's the best way to teach people. Like the strategies where people have to become like a PhD just to be able to take their first trade, those people make the least amount of money. I'm being serious. That used to be me. I was a harmonic trader with 5 different indicators. And I saw someone who was trading zone to zone, making 50 grand in a week. And then it was like an earth shattering moment for me. Like because I'd spent so much time mastering that, like the complicated shit. And I was like, come on, bro. Like this is all I had to do. And so simplicity really is what scales in trading, and complexity fails.
Absolutely. Like when I see people's charts all over the place, like I had this one girl the other day, I was like, yeah, so show me your analysis. Like she had I'm like, this looks like an art piece. This looks like you could have this in Art Basel right now. She had indicators, Fibonacci, drawn lines everywhere. I was like, you couldn't see where the market was going. And it's so funny. It's just like all the traders that I look at that are super successful, very simplistic. It's very just a simple.
They're not doing all this shit behind.
Yeah.
My charts would never look like this, people. This is just the background. Dimitri, you want to do a quick fire round? I want to ask things that almost everybody wants to know, things like stop losses, etc. So we'll start one by one. What do you think about stop losses?
Same thing I think about seatbelts. You need them, right? I do think sometimes, stop losses are a limiting belief. I do believe that they do have some type of limited belief in them. But they're essential, right? They're a limiting belief, but they're a limiting belief that also help you not lose bread. Like you definitely need a stop loss. It's just as important as a seatbelt. You can't go 150 miles in a Bugatti without a seatbelt. Like you got to put on your seatbelt, So I think stop losses are important. And I think knowing how to use them effectively is also what's very important. Because some tools that you have can either hinder you or they can reward you in the end. So I'd say stop losses are very important, and finding out a good size stop loss for a good risk to reward ratio for when you're entering trades. I feel like a lot of people have a stop loss that's way too wide or way too small, and they can't just find that like even middle ground. Their stop losses are like 300, 200 pips. I'm like, come on now. Especially
on gold, bro. I took a trade the other day, and I knew the mistake I was making when I put it on. I'm like, this needs more room, bro. I know gold.
Yeah, right. The wick backs be crazy.
It was like 20, 30 pips way past just kept going to the next station and then shot back up. And I was like, there it is. So stop loss placement and understanding the strategy and how the stop loss is supposed to be placed, very crucial thing that folks should be paying attention to. Prop firms.
I think prop firms, one thing I like about prop firms, for me personally, is that I like that they give people a kind of rule-based system. You have to make 5%. You have to make X amount of percent in X amount of time. So it kind of gives people a little bit of a structure. That's what I do like, because versus like people just come into trading and they're like, I'm going to make 10%. I'm going to make 100%, 150%. They don't have like a set goal. So that's one thing that I do say I appreciate about prop firms is they kind of set up that target for people to hit. Because if I blindfold you and spin you around in a circle and tell you to play darts, how are you going to hit a target you can't see? Right. And so that's what I kind of love.
Fire. I wish I had one of those soundboards, like to agree whenever you drop something, whenever you drop like a bomb or something, just go.
Master Flex.
You wouldn't be able to hear shit the whole podcast.
EAs.
Yep.
I'm very indifferent towards EAs. Sometimes until they don't work. And they definitely need some fine tuning sometimes because the market is constantly changing and adapting. Same way I kind of feel about, the whole algos and everything like that. So very indifferent towards EAs. I'll leave it at that.
So if they're managed properly, then it could be done right. But
it could be done right.
A lot of the times people just not doing it right.
Yeah. A lot of the times.
Cool. All right. Talk to me about indicators.
I think, man, indicators definitely can be useful at times. I'm a very price action based trader. Obviously, you guys know I use Bookmap and order flow and stuff like that. But I think indicators could be useful at times when you don't have too much of a confirmation bias. And I think that's what traders suffer from, is that sometimes they overuse indicators and they get this thing called confirmation bias, where they believe that their setup is 100% right because this indicator confirmed it. And they kind of end up losing sight of like, okay, well, what if it went this way? That's also a good way to think, like, okay, well, if I got into this situation, if I got into a fight, it's like, if you get into a fight, it's like, well, okay, well, what if you think of all the ways you could win, but what if you lose? What if you get hit in the head? What if you fall a certain way? I think the what if is also a really good part to add into an indicator instead of solely just relying on that, because then you get too wrapped up in your ego and you think this is definitely going to happen when it may not.
That's really good nuance here. So the last part of this is something something that's a little bit different than what we normally do. I want you to have a conversation with me like I was a student. Okay. Like if you had a protege and you're like supposed to talk to them, and I'm like, hey, I'm going to start my trading journey. I've already had 1 year of experience, didn't go the way I wanted. What is the conversation that you would have with me before we get off this podcast to help me get into the right direction?
If you've been trading for 1 year and it's not been going the way you wanted.
Yeah. Like let's say you haven't reached the level of success that you thought you were going to reach.
I would start asking a series of questions. I would say, well, do you document your trades? Do you write down certain emotions that you were feeling during a trade? As a trader starting off, when I was first starting off, I would like to document like, okay, let's say I went through a week of trades. Okay, what was I feeling this week? What happened that may be affected by trades? Is my stop loss too wide? Am I using too big of a lot size? How's my risk management? I think a lot of times that we don't self-analyze ourselves and we don't check ourselves, and we get into this comfortability of where we think, oh, it's okay, like I'll just develop from this. But the only way to develop from something and being something new is checking that who you are now, right? If you think that your punches incorrect, then you'll never learn how to refine them and make them new. So I would tell a trader to constantly refine yourself, reshape yourself, and reform yourself always. Like look for new ways to look for certain things about yourself that that you don't like, or certain characteristic traits that you could change. Usually I'll ask traders like, what do you say your worst quality is? Oh, I'm greedy. Okay, well, you're greedy. That's something you need to write down. What else do you say? I get anxiety. I'm too emotional. I'm this. Most people know what they already are, but they don't check themselves. So I think self-analyzation is extremely important and a part of character development. So that's what I would tell new traders.
All right, that was so heat. I'm going to have to ask the follow-up, which is, do you have any practical steps for personal development? I know everyone's journey is unique, but are there any questions that you think stood out to you that you asked yourself that allowed you to discover more about yourself? Anything that you could share?
For instance, I feel like a lot of who you are in the charts also comes from who you are in real life, right? If you're a person that's just naturally greedy, like you just have the greed mentality, right? Maybe you not be like selfish kind of greedy, but you'll take an opportunity anytime you can, or you'll try to take as much as you can from something. I think that also shows up in the charts. If you're a person that's waiting in line at a supermarket and there's like 3 people ahead of you and you're getting impatient, then how can you wait up for a setup for a week? So I think a lot of who you are off the charts also sometimes comes into play of who you are when you're at the charts. You know what I mean? And I feel like a lot of people don't realize that. They kind of just think, oh, I could just be a new person on the charts. But it's like, but if you were greedy this whole time, you know, in your regular life, why would it change when you have endless opportunity in the market? If you were impatient standing on John, why would you be patient now for waiting for a week setup? So I think realizing who you are as a person, your character, and kind of refining and reshaping that, if that makes sense.
So how you do something is how you do everything. If you're lazy in your real life, it's going to bleed into the charts. If you're unorganized in your real life, it'll bleed into the charts. If you're scared, too cocky, that's awesome.
Also, I would say a lot of people don't want to take accountability for their behavior. And there's something that my grandma always used to tell me. He who hides the wrong he did always does the wrong thing still. So if you're hiding the fact that you've been doing the wrong thing, you're just going to continue to do the wrong thing over and over.
Man, you coming by for round 2? Can we expect a round 2 from you?
We could definitely expect a round 2.
Okay. Well, ladies, gents, if you guys want to know more about Dimitri, where can they follow you on socials?
So they can follow me at the Goldfather _. It's my only account. I'm sure you guys have been exposed to all these different fake accounts from your favorite people that you follow. You could follow me at the Goldfather _ on Instagram. And then you could also go to my website, which is goldminesglobal.com, or you could go to goldprimefunding.com, which is the prop firm where we do fund traders. And that is the problem, that a lot of traders don't have capital. So that's where we come in and add the value.
All right, ladies, gents, that's where you can find him. If you guys want to see him break down the charts, there's a recording of the charity stream that we did last year. Dimitri's on there breaking down some charts. Thank you, everybody, for stopping by. Take it easy, chart addicts. Merci beaucoup. You want to do something in Mandarin? Merci beaucoup.
Oh yeah, definitely. 谢谢大家人，你可以跟随我的 Instagram 是金爸爸，那是 underscore， 然后我的网上是 goldprimefunding.com， 我的中文名字是巧克力王子，很高兴认识你。
I'm going to have somebody translate that, and if you were talking shit about me, I'm going to know.
Right? 做外汇做股票。
I appreciate you. All right, everybody, we just saw some incredible traders here at the FIP compound. Make sure that you guys grab your tickets to the FX Summit 2023 conference if you want to meet all these incredible traders, if you want to meet myself and learn from the best. So we'll see you guys, fxsummit2023.com.